Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says that he wants to see a COVID-style response to the housing crisis and that he won't even let the Constitution stop him. This is Scallan and you're watching Gript Media. Before we start the video, if you want to support Gript and our work, make sure to click like, subscribe and comment, because by liking, commenting and sharing, this channel will get boosted in the algorithm and get seen by more people. So if you want to see this channel grow, just take 2 seconds right now to like, comment and do your part to support independent journalism. And so with that said, on to the video. Years ago, Labour Party TD Alan Kelly said that, quote, "Power is a drug," adding that it suited him. While this was, needless to say, very controversial at the time for obvious reasons, and Kelly later on said that he regretted saying it, his description was remarkably accurate, because like many drugs, power is as addictive as it is intoxicating. When you give someone the power to control millions of other people's lives and set the agenda for an entire society, some people get hooked on that feeling. Some people lose the run of themselves and go absolutely haywire. And that is clearly what's happening to the Irish government in recent years. Why else, after all, would the government want to use a COVID-style response to the housing crisis, reaching menacingly for their emergency powers once again? As reported by BreakingNews.ie recently, housing crisis is holding Ireland back, says Varadkar. The housing crisis is holding Ireland back as a country, the Taoiseach has said. Leo Varadkar said a can-do COVID-style response needs to be adopted to solve the emergency situation, similar to the response taken to the pandemic. Sometimes in government, we're too willing to say that things can't be done because of public finances, because of state aid rules, or because of the Constitution, or because of something else. I'm not willing to accept that, he said. So according to Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, the government should respond to the housing crisis in the same way they responded to COVID, and he's not even willing to accept the Constitution as an excuse for why we shouldn't. At this point, it's probably worth pointing out that it's a little concerning to hear the Taoiseach of our country saying that the Constitution, i.e. the highest legal document in the land, shouldn't be a limiting factor on what the government does in X or Y situation. The entire point of the Constitution, after all, is to hem in the government and restrain its power from riding roughshod over the people and their rights. When the government is constantly running into constitutional roadblocks and being prevented from doing what they want, that's actually a good thing, believe it or not. That means that the Constitution is doing its job, which is to hold back the power of politicians. I'd also add that in that list, he said that public finances shouldn't be a barrier to the government's housing goals either. But public finances absolutely are a barrier whether we like it or not. You either have the budget to do something or you don't. And contrary to what most governments think, money actually exists and is finite. That's like saying money shouldn't be a barrier to me being able to afford a Lamborghini. Well, I mean, you can say that, but the reality of the situation disagrees with you. But putting all of that aside, let's stop and think about this for a moment. What does Varadkar mean by a COVID-style response to housing? What's he actually referring to here exactly? Well, I could sit here and tell you what I think it means, but instead of listening to me, it might be better to let Varadkar explain in his own words. Here's how Leo Varadkar described his own government's COVID response in 2021.
Well, the sooner we can repeal legislation, the better, in my view. You know, if you told me 2 years ago that we'd live in a country where it was illegal to leave the state for non-essential reasons, illegal to enter the state for non-essential reasons, that you couldn't have people over to your own house, or you couldn't meet outside with more than 15 people, I would have thought you were absolutely bonkers. Like what's happened in the last year or two really is unprecedented. We overused that term, but what's happened in the last year really is unprecedented. You know, we want to go to a new normal. We want to build back better, as people say. But one thing I definitely do not want to keep on the statute books is this draconian legislation for any longer than is necessary. Unfortunately, it is still necessary. Like, we're not out of the woods yet. And that's why we're going to have to extend it.
So according to Varadkar, his own government's lockdown was draconian and absolutely bonkers. And adding to this, he even admitted that it was a curtailment of people's freedoms that he never thought he would see in this country.
Because of the pandemic, we have passed some extraordinary laws in this House and signed into law some extraordinary regulations that I never thought we would do. And we have curtail people's freedom in a way that I never thought we would in the past year or so. And we've given Gardaí powers to do things that I never thought we would give the Gardaí the powers to do. But this is an unprecedented situation. This is a pandemic. It's not over yet.
So putting all of this together, Ireland's COVID response was an absolutely bonkers, draconian, unprecedented curtailment of people's freedoms and civil rights. And that's not according to me or Gript, that's according to the Taoiseach of our country. He said that. And yet he also thinks at the same time that this same approach is needed to deal with housing. Now, what does that mean in practice exactly? Of course, some might say that he's just referring to an all-of-government response. Maybe he just means that in the same way all arms of the state pulled together to address COVID, the same level of focus should be put on housing, right? But in the breakingnews.ie piece from earlier, Varadkar said that the government was looking to accommodate thousands of asylum seekers with this policy. As the article reads, the Dublin West TD said next year that the government needs to move from an emergency and humanitarian response to, quote, more permanent housing solutions. There are people here, for example, 5,000 people living in direct provision who have asylum status. It'd be good if we could find a way to accommodate them to free up those places. And we already covered in a recent video how the government is offering free own-door accommodation to asylum seekers within months of their arrival, thereby incentivizing people to come to Ireland illegally and break our nation's immigration laws. So what are the government playing at exactly, and why should we trust parties who have failed to deliver housing for over a decade with even more power over the housing market? You know, in the private sector, when an employee cocks up badly, you give them less power and responsibility, not more. If you're given a simple job and you make a balls of it, you're supposed to pay some kind of price for that in a normal organization. If a manager at a company goes way over budget and over time on some kind of project that he's been given, he gets less money the following year. Or maybe he even gets demoted or fired altogether depending on the severity of his mistake. That's how life is supposed to work, and that's how it does work for most of us. It's only in the government that you can make blunder after blunder after blunder for years on end continuously, and the only takeaway at the end is give that man more money and power pronto. Our only problem is that he doesn't control enough of society. He couldn't handle the simple jobs we gave him initially, so let's give him 10 times more power and responsibility and see if that helps anything. It is in fact the reasoning of a lunatic, and that is how many people think in this country. The same lads who have shredded housing, healthcare, the defence forces, military neutrality, law and order, border control, education, energy, agriculture, fishing, and who can't build a hospital without going €1 billion over budget should apparently be given even greater power over property rights as well. Does that sound like a good idea to anyone on earth? Well, it apparently sounds good to the Marxist left in Ireland, such as those in People Before Profit, who want the government to seize private property to accommodate Ukrainians.
Putin's bloody invasion and the fact that there's a war gives, in my opinion, the Minister extra powers, and I want to specifically refer to the Emergency Powers Act of 1939, which gives you the power to do extraordinary, unprecedented things, which include, and this is critical, in Section 2G, to authorise and provide for the acquisition, taking possession, control or use, either by agreement or compulsorily by the state, of any land or other property whatsoever, in the context of war. Now, I personally believe we should have used those powers before to get hold of vacant and empty buildings, but whatever about that debate, I'm appealing to the Minister to now use that power, because I think you are justified in using it.
So in short, seize people's private property and give it to Ukrainians. That's the solution of this country's so-called opposition party to the problems that we currently face as a nation. In fairness to Alan Kelly, he was dead right about one thing. Power is indeed a drug, and in that regard, our politicians are absolute junkies. Please like and share this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider signing up for a monthly donation via the link on screen to help us produce more content like this. Alternative media like Gript needs all the assistance it can get, and every donation goes a long way. As always, thanks for watching.